There we go. All right. So I'm back. My computer froze, and I wonder. I'm using a slightly different method of streaming. I'm going out from HDMI into my HDMI capture device. So maybe that was it. I'm not sure. But it froze and won't let me recontinue the stream. Oddly enough. So, that's why I'm doing these things to get used to this process. I think I'm going to be doing more of this. I mean, not this, but streaming. So, I was, when I last left off, I was collecting logos in order to populate a screen, because I'm going to show you like how many of these are not making containers anymore, and there's quite a few of them, and that's only in the last 5 years. So the only one left that I have that I'm aware of is, I'll actually put Strong in there too, is Parachute Labs, and this is their website. It's kind of, they don't make a lot of containers anymore, I don't think, and yeah, their student, yeah, they don't do a lot anymore. But they have some very ardent fans, so there's people that love them. I'm not a fan, but I'm not going to tell anyone not to jump them. There's nothing wrong with them. There's some rigging considerations that someone who goes with one should know. And generally, if you like the container, then that's fine. Then that's what you're going to go with. And if you don't like them, you're not. So that's kind of the thing there. I'm just going to do they don't really have a logo, and their website is kind of atrocious. For example, if we go to technical part and I go to these documents and I click on a document, sometimes they come up and then sometimes they don't. Maybe they fixed it. Oh yeah, there's a, from the 90s, there's that under construction site. Yeah, this is like, what the heck? This is kind of bad. This is a reason why I generally wouldn't recommend them. Like, main lift web safety notice. Okay, that sounds important. Came out 20 years ago. I'm going to click on that link, and then it's just nothing. Or I'll click on, does your gliding parachute really glide? And it's just this standard page. So that's kind of not great. So some of them do work, but most of them don't appear to work. And what if I needed a manual? So I'll go to download racer owner manual. Does that work? No, it doesn't work. That's great. So maybe just avoid them. As a rigger, if I'm going to pack a parachute, I need the manual to pack it, because I need to look in case I'm missing something, or I just need to know how they want it done. And if it's, I can't find it, maybe I could Google it or try to see someone who's got it. So put that there. Yeah, I haven't been on a skydive, even a big wave skydive with one of those in a long time. Anyway, so these are all, I want to do Strong. strong parachute equipment. They still make strong parachutes. Commercial. So they still make bailout rigs and tandem, I think. But they don't make anything for sports skydivers anymore. Strong Enterprises, that's what they used to be. So this one I can just crop. So go to crop there, and we'll just say Strong Enterprises. They weren't very popular even when I started, but they have a history. Unfortunately, the founder, I believe, has passed away. Ted Strong. When did he pass away? He passed away a long time ago. Nope, wrong Ted Strong. It was a skydiving accident. He was he died in 2011 before I started. Okay. I believe it was a test jump. He was testing some military stuff. Legend in the field, but yeah. So these are all the manufacturers from that were around in like 2019. And what I'm going to do is show that the landscape has changed. So I will do an animation. Animations are fine. They can even be very useful. It's just the transitions stay away from transitions. Another thing that helps me to do these things, even if no one watches them, is it's the rubber duck. Programming, we have the concept of the rubber duck programming. So you're trying to do something, and sometimes you can't figure it out. So you put a rubber duck on your desk, and you explain what you're doing to the rubber duck. And by explaining it, sometimes you just figure out what you're doing. So Roxy's watching this. She's my rubber duck right now. Okay, so I'll do some animations and parachute systems. We're going to disappear. Going to fade out. Then Strong Enterprises, going to fade out. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do, copy that, paste it into here. So stack them on top of each other. That one's going to disappear. And this one's going to appear because that's what happened. They became, Rigging Innovations became part of Sunpath. I'm just going to spin this one because I don't know what the fuck is happening to that one. Firebird, Parachute Labs. Yeah, that's about right. Is there any others that I missed? One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There were 11 manufacturers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 manufacturers. There were 12 manufacturers in like 2019, I think, around then, or 2017. So I made this list originally in 2017. That's how many there were, and then a bunch had gone away. So things got weird. So that's why this one was hard to make, because things were changing. So we'll talk about talk about we'll put that into the disclaimers. And then we've got topics: container anatomy, sizing, features, comfort, and aesthetics, new versus used container evaluation. I need to put a section here on legal. So I'm going to make this, I'm going to take out the subsections, but I'm just making this as kind of a, making this as a slight outline, and then I'll take out the subsection. So it's just the main things. Legal, and then I can reorder them if I need to, but I need to get these thoughts out. And then brands to avoid. So some of them are, I have to talk about the concept of an orphaned brand, non-legal brands, and not good for beginners. So we'll talk about those things. So I'm not going to do all these in one sitting, but I want to knock out as many as I can. So let's do container anatomy, and I'll describe the different parts of the container. So container anatomy. I'll put a section in between them. Now, do I use a picture? That I took, or that I get off of one of their manufacturing websites, or do I do something like use my skills in PowerPoint to make my own rough approximation? I think that's what I might do. And I can replace it later if I don't like it. So fill that with a darker color. And then I'll have, these are the shoulder straps. There's a yoke that goes across the back. So do different perspectives. Then I'll do the chest strap. These go down to the leg straps. And then the shape for the leg straps, I might want to do, I have like a disc or something. Like that. That'll work. Need something for the yoke, maybe. There's built-in shape that I can do. Oh, perfect. So that's the front-on representation. I'll do the side presentation. So this is my general process for making content, for making presentations, courseware, that kind of thing. Is I just go through it and do it like this. I need a wedge. Is there a wedge in here? Wedge. Yeah, that'll work. shoulder harness. This will be thinner. These are the laterals. And then I'll put a couple of things in here. This is the reserve pack tray. I'll do a different color. The main pack tray. Then there's a little pocket underneath. That's the BOC, the bottom of container. That's where your deployment handle is. Your main pilot, or your deployment pilot chute. So I need a cylinder, half moon. Do I have one of those? Partial circle. Yeah, perfect. All right, container anatomy. And what I'll do is I'll do some call outs. I freaking love call outs. You know, one thing that I'm trying to figure out is, should I change? I've always had the idea that all of my slides should have a white background, with a couple of exceptions, and then the text be black. Because when I was working, I still am an instructor, but when I was traveling to instruct, I was always presenting on a projector rather. So I'd have a projector projecting my screen up onto a wall or a projector screen. And the best way that would work is if you had a white background, because it would match with whatever's on the wall typically. And then you had black text. And if you did anything else, it was harder to read. So like I would see some people try to get really fancy with their templates, and they would do weird things with the text. Like they would make it like that. And you can kind of see it here, but on a projector, especially like a 10-year-old projector with a bad bulb, you're not going to be able to see that contrast. So you want to maximize the contrast by default. So I would do this, but nowadays people are not watching this content. They're not watching it on a projector anymore. They're watching it on a laptop or a tablet or a desktop or even their phone. So does it work better in those cases if it's white text on a black background? And I think that might be the case. I'm not ready to switch this over yet because that's a whole other thing. But that's something I think about in terms of like what's going to make it better. So, you know what would help is if I could put a human in here, and I subscribe to this thing called Motion Array. It's got all the stock footage and stuff, so I can do a graphics. And I can look up human, see if we can find just like a person and body human. Looking at it in another window. Maybe anatomy. Do body. Yeah, body. Probably that's a better thing. Better thing to look up. This one with like chakras. I don't need chakras. See if we can find one I can use for free. All right, I'm going to use one from a place called Flaticon, and I need to do the proper attribution. This would be under fair use. So this, I just need a PNG, free download, attribution required. Move it up there. Then I need to set these. Send them to back. And I need these to come forward. Bring to front. That way the human fits in there. The bus side profile as well. Yeah, some of these are wild. It's like butts and stuff. Yeah, we'll do that one. Let's do this, free download. This one right there. So I need to do proper attribution. So this one was how to attribute video, copy link. I'll put that in the live stream, edit that. That's a weird line. Like, I don't want to steal like icons and stuff that people have made, so I'm gonna make sure I use them the right way. But I do grab the icons for the logos, but I would think that would work under fair use. So if you're skydiving, well, some of them might not want me to use their names. Depending on what I have to say about them, they might be like, keep our name out your mouth. A friend of mine actually just messaged me. She says, I just packed my reserve and the pull force is too high. I hate it when that happens. All right, attribute, because this one might be different. Put that in there. It won't let me do... Won't let me put in the URLs. All right, hopefully that's enough. All right, so the side one. I'll just swappy. I'm also going to crop this. Not like that. Crop. Because there's a whole bunch of like blank space. Kind of gets in the way sometimes. Doesn't affect the actual image. This is what you learn after years of PowerPoint. All right, so I will. Oh yeah, I need to adjust these. So this, and this. These are going to be bring to front. Put them in their harness. Also crop this down at the bottom. Not squeeze, crop. Crop, there we go. I didn't mean to crop that part. Not the head. Just the feetsies. All right, so I'm going to do lots of callouts here. And callouts I like to do is white. So under quick styles, I'll just pick white. And I'll bring this to front. Shoulder. Let's do main lift web. MLW. Because it's the overall part. There's the chest strap. Leg straps. So if there's too many of these, then I'll use some animations to have them appear and disappear, just so it's not so cluttered. Because this is not going to be given to people as a presentation. It's going to be done on a video that I narrate. So this is inside. This is the reserve pack tray. This is the space the reserve goes into. And this is the main pack tray. So main's always on the bottom. And this is the BOC, bottom of container pocket, which houses the pilot chute. This is the yoke. Shoulder pads, chest strap, leg straps. I'll put belly band. You don't need one always. They're not super common, but I'm seeing them more and more often. They might have a belly band. We'll just put it optional. Sometimes people see those there. Sometimes the belly bands are just to hold weights. Because in case you're a lighter person, you need to fall faster, you can have a weight belt. Sometimes the belly band has the weight pockets in it, so you can just put some lead in there. Sometimes swoopers use them so that they can really undo their chest strap and really lean forward on their high speed approaches without falling out of the container. So yeah, that's good for container anatomy. I think that covers that. I might replace this with pictures of live people, but this will work for now. Sizing. Actually, that might be under sizing. Well, I'll just put the content and then figure out how I'm going to arrange it. Sometimes you can get really stuck on like, do I do this first or that first, or how am I going to do this? And it's just better to just barf it out. Just spit out the content, and then you can figure out if you're going to either not use it or use it for something else. Yeah. I got some tea here. So sizing. I do have some slides for this I might be able to use. So there's two main issues with the sizing of a container. Is how do we do this? I hate these. Sizing for the human, sizing for the canopies. Sizing for the canopies. I'll use this picture. I was given permission by a photographer by the name of Dennis Sattler to use his photos in my presentations, which I'm very grateful for. I always try to attribute him. Make that a little bit smaller. I also don't crop out he's got it's hard to tell here. He does have a little watermark there with his name on there, so I don't crop that out. So we size for the human, we size for the canopies. So we'll do human sizing. The point I'm trying to make is that humans come in different sizes. So do containers. So if I have a graphic on the side, I usually put it to the right, and I'll just make the text area a little bit smaller. So human sizing, I was thinking maybe I could use Da Vinci's Virtuous Man as the icon here. But you can see his junk, and I don't want to put that into there. So humans come in different sizes, so do containers. A container needs to fit a person, and not too big, not too small. So this would just prompt the conversation. Like, I would say that humans come in different sizes, so do containers. So the container needs to fit the person. There's going to be container sizes that are meant for bigger people and for smaller people. And you need to make sure that it's going to fit. It's going to be able to keep the person inside the thing. Maybe I'll do I'll just copy this. Oops, don't need to move that. Don't need to move that. So copy this and put it here for sizing. I'll get rid of this. I'll do that select again. And I'm going to group this just so everything's nice and tidy here. I'm going to hold down Shift, and then that way when I resize it, it keeps the scale. A little trick for PowerPoint, because if I don't, I can do that. And that's not gonna, usually I don't want to do that. I mean, sometimes I do. So if I hold on Shift, it'll keep the scale. So, and then I'll select the inner image person, and then I'll shrink them down. and then put them in the middle. That's too small. And then we'll do the same thing over here. Group it. And then select the inner person and then grow them. Oops, didn't mean to do that. What is this, the rig for ants? Actually looks pretty nice. I need the leg straps in front. Yeah, that better shows that human's too big for that. Human's too small for that. Is the original picture in there? Can I uncrop that to... Yeah, it is. Cool. I can just make them... There we go. Perfect. Just a demonstration. Just a... oh, yeah. And then how do you know? So... How do you know? Have a rigger or instructor consult so container needs to fit a person. I can skip the too big or too small thing. So yeah, how do you know? For a new rig, get measured and they'll make it to your body size. Used rig, how big was the person you're buying from, or buy from a similar sized person? And try it on first. How do you make sure? Have a rigger or instructor watch, see it on you. So one of the things I do is like they'll put the rig on and then I'll have them like, okay, can you arch? Does the chest strap look okay? Does it fit okay? Can you reach back, touch your handles? So if you don't get a container that's like perfectly sized for you, there's a little bit of wiggle room in terms of what you buy. So you can, like, if like I'm 5'8" and I'm probably 170 pounds. So 5'8", 170 pounds, 175 pounds, and then if someone was 5'8" and 200 pounds, probably not going to fit because it's not going to be enough room in there. Or if they're 130 pounds, also maybe too much room. So even if we're the same height, containers need to fit a person, height and weight. So those are the things. So not only is how tall you are, that's probably the most important aspect, but also like, is someone way more or more muscular? Because if someone is not muscular and doesn't have a lot of body fat, that's going to be a much smaller harness than if someone who either has a lot of body fat or is more muscular. Also, there's a difference between men and women, or people with breasts. This is kind of awkward to talk about, but if you're a person who has very large breasts, then you may want to have some different considerations for where the chest strap goes. And that would be something either when you had a container made, they would measure you, they would measure your bust size, and they would figure that out. So there's all sorts of different things that come into play here. And then sometimes your body changes over time. If you have to be an adult to skydive, at least in the US, but some people lose weight, some people gain weight. So that may affect how your rig fits on you. I've noticed over the years, my chest strap is not quite as, I don't have quite as much slack in my chest strap. So So human sizing, I think that's good for that. And then we'll talk about container sizing. I did already have some slides for this, and I used a vendor's photo of their rig. So I don't know if I want to do that, but so I'm just copying the slides over. Maybe I'll just do this one. So this is from the last one I made. So main and reserve pack trays are usually similar. Sometimes there's some differences. Some models have differences. The reserve pack tray has no wiggle room. The main pack tray may, not always, have wiggle room. Have wiggle room. So the main reserve pack tray are usually similar in size. Let's do another slide. Main and reserve pack trays have a limited range of sizes for parachutes that will fit. Usually 2 sizes. So 170, 190, those are considered 2 sizes. Most reserve canopies are going to be about 170 square feet or 190 square feet. There's slight differences sometimes. But that's usually what the sizes are. Like, you're not going to find usually a 180 size reserve. You can sometimes, but I don't know any on the market. Must conform to user manual. So the reserve size, it's not lawful for a rigger to put a reserve. Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm thinking it's not lawful for a rigger to put a reserve that doesn't fit that's not specified in the reserve container. The main, there's a little bit more wiggle room because it's not a rigger doing it. And I've put in smaller containers or smaller parachutes into the main. But the reserve, of course, we have a lot less wiggle room in any aspect for a reserve because that's our last hope in case we have a malfunction. There may be some wiggle room there. Like on some containers, if it says 170 and 190, I might be able to sneak a 150 in there, depending on a couple of factors. But a reserve, I'm not going to put a 150 in a reserve pack tray that specifies 170 to 190. Or I'm not going to put a 210 in there either. So it's going to be 170 to 190 or whatever. Some of the manufacturers will have a list of approved reserve sizes and like specific models of reserve. Then you can do that. It kind of depends. And then, so this is the slides I'm using from a previous presentation. We will talk about low pack reserve or low pack volume. Some container or some parachutes, both main and reserve, have low pack volume versions. LPV fabric takes up less space, and thus a larger size can fit. I'll check with the manufacturer. For example, if I have a low pack volume reserve, and it says it'll fit a 190, but it's a low pack volume reserve. I could put a 210 in there, and it would be legal, and because of the way that they pack. And in fact, both my containers have a low pack volume reserve in there. You want to check with the manufacturer, of course. So there's low pack volumes. Yeah, I think that's fine for that. So that's good start for sizing. Let's do safety features. So here I will definitely put in a thing here, section header. All right, I'm going to go freshen my, I don't think there's anyone watching right now. Oh, someone is watching. I think I know who it is. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to refresh my tea and hit the restroom. Be right back. All right, water's boiling. So safety features. What safety features do we care about? We're going to split them up into safety features that are required. Not by law, but by just, if you're going to buy a rig, it's got to have these things. Like, don't buy a rig that doesn't have RSLs. Don't buy a rig that has, don't buy a rig that doesn't have the channel for the cutaway cable. So things like that. And then there's going to be safety features. Safety features. Safety features that are optional, but nice to have. So safety, let's do required safety features. You should definitely have an RSL, which is a reserve static line. And every rig, so what it does is, you should know this as a new skydiver, but just to remind them, this will pop the reserve pin as the main departs. So if you have a cutaway and you cut away your main, and as the main's leaving, there's a lanyard attached from your riser down on this side or this side, depends. And it goes down to and pulls the pin on your reserve, and your reserve has a spring-loaded pilot chute. And so that'll deploy the reserve for you, so you don't have to deploy it. You should still deploy, pull the handle. You make sure that it's only single-sided. There's only one manufacturer that has ever really done well in the past 20 years that has done a dual-sided RSL, and that's Jump Shack Racer. And they're idiotic for doing so. They're just freaking morons for doing so. But and I think most people agree with that. It almost killed someone once because they cut away their main. And that dual-sided RSL, there's a lanyard that goes across the yoke, and it wrapped up into the reserve and choked it off and almost killed the person. Luckily, the person landed in soft dirt, because if he landed on a pavement, he would have died. So instead, he just got I think he got a concussion and got the wind knocked out of him. So make sure it's only single-sided. It's not a very controversial. I mean, 3 people at, I don't think there's 3 people at Jump Shack anymore. But there might be 3 people in the world that disagree, but I think 99.9% of people agree that it should be a single-sided RSL. Make sure it's only single-sided. And then there will be skydives that you do where you might want to disconnect the RSL. Some of the more advanced skydives, you might want to do it that way. And then also, if you're going to land in water, or you're going to land in high winds on like a building or something, there's some emergency procedures where there's a lanyard disconnect you can use to disconnect your RSL. But most of the time, we're going to jump with the RSL connected. I've only ever done 1 jump without an RSL, and that was because I rented a rig in Germany. They didn't have RSLs. So it was kind of odd that they didn't, but all the jumps I've done, I've got over 2,000 jumps, 2,100 something jumps, and I've always used an RSL. Reserve static line. Most rigs will have it. I mean, it's only like really old rigs, something that's over 20 years old. And we'll talk about age as well. But most rigs are going to have an RSL, but you should still make sure it has it. You know what? I'm going to have a, yeah, I'll also have 80 pocket. So there should be a place to put an 80 in. Again, it's only going to be really old reserve or really old rigs that may not have a slot for an AED, and that would be like the early 90s and earlier, perhaps. But anything you get in the past 25 years is going to have an AED pocket. See what else we need. We want, what else do we want? We want, this is something not a lot of people realize, is reinforced cutaway housing in risers. That's another thing we probably want to talk about is risers, because they come with a container. Let me put a note up here about risers. Maybe put it separate features or under aesthetics. This will be risers. So this will be under non-safety options. What did I call it? Comfort and aesthetic options. Because risers are they're a part of the container usually. You can get a separate set. You can get multiple sets. But when you buy a container, it's going to come with a set of risers almost always. So I'll put that. We want reinforced cutaway housing and risers. Older risers are just a cloth channel for the excess cutaway cable to go into. And it's normally okay, but if you have severe line twists, you can twist it all the way up, and it can actually pinch the risers, and that will cause you not to be able to cut away. It actually happened to a friend of mine. Luckily, he was able to free himself and cut away, but he had about a 2-second reserve ride, so that was kind of scary. So we want to reinforce cutaway housing and risers. I think it spooked him. I don't think he jumps anymore. So yeah, so required safety features. What? Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. It's not really anything else. I mean, they're so common now that if you get anything made in the last 10 years, they're going to have these. If you get anything made in the last 20 years, they will almost certainly have these. In the past 30 years, you might run into some issues. And so I might actually put a separate page on old gear considerations. Some containers that are made in the 1990s made in the 1990s are still okay. Can be okay. But you'll want to make sure a few things. Hard housing for cutaway cables. I actually have a rig called a Flaticon. I use it for a water rig, and it didn't have the cutaway housing for hard housing for cutaway cables. They kind of look like these tubes that go into your rig, and they look like the old payphone cord. And I think that's what it was. And it used to be just a cloth channel, so your cutaway cable would go across your yoke, and there's just cloth channel, so it could pinch. So we want to make sure there's a hard housing for cutaway cables. My rig was made that Flaticon rig was made in 1981. I only jumped it once, and just because I bought it as a really cheap water rig. It was still airworthy, but it wouldn't be appropriate for most other types of jumps. I don't think it had an AED pocket either. Hard housing, and because I didn't use an AED on that jump. It's only 2 jumps I've ever done that I didn't use an AED. I'm gonna go get my tea. It's getting close to wine o'clock, but I don't make skydiving content if I've had any alcohol for obvious reasons. No, IT content sometimes is better. No, I'm just kidding. But powered by tea. So hard housing for cutaway cables. I'll just put it this, like, some things to watch out for on older rigs, 25 plus years. Now, in the United States, there's no blanket limit for how old gear can be. And it's really just kind of like, is it still in good shape? And nylon and the materials that most rigs are made of are going to last a long time as long as they're cared for right. They're stored correctly. So it's usually not. So if you haven't used a rig for 20 years and it's been in a closet, as long as it's been properly cared for, put in a climate controlled place, not too much humidity, because it's what really kills skydiving gear when it's been stored is mold and mildew, because it will eat the nylon, will eat the fabrics and weaken it, and so that'll make something unairworthy. So so there definitely can be containers that are 25 years old or older that are airworthy and can work for someone. But there's a couple of things you want to keep back to. Make sure that there's hard housing for cutaway cables. Make sure there's an AED pocket. Make sure there's not Velcro, because Velcro is not too much Velcro. Velcro causes a lot of issues. It damages lines. Another name for Velcro is hook and pile. And the hook is the abrasive part. I think that the hook is the abrasive part. That's the scratchy stuff. It will grab onto nylon lines and parachute lines and just rip them up. And you can have to replace parachute lines because it just dragged over the Velcro. So we try to keep, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, they didn't realize this as much. So make there's not too much Velcro, damages lines, and generally isn't free fly friendly. That's another thing I'll put up here. There are some containers that are not free fly friendly, and what free fly means is that you're going to be anything else other than belly to earth. And today there really shouldn't be that many rigs out there that aren't free fly friendly. And there are some rigs that are kind of, if you're going to do anything, to do anything but belly. And even if you're not going to do anything other than belly, where you're just jumping belly to earth, there might be times when you are not belly to earth. Maybe you're on your back because of formation funneled. Because that has certainly happened to me. And when you're free flying, you're generally going faster than belly terminal. So belly terminal is about 120 miles per hour, give or take, depending on how much I had to eat that morning. When you're free flying, it's usually in the 150s, I think. So you're going much faster. So the gear has to be, flaps have to make sure, flaps don't come out and cause some issues. Oh, another one is bridles. Just putting these as I think about them. Bridles. Dynamic corners. So older rigs, you want to make sure they have cutaway cable hard housing for the cutaway cables. Make sure there's an AD pocket. Hard housing for cutaway cables and risers. So I've only run into one container that didn't have the cutaway, the hard housing for the cutaway cables in the container, but I have seen several hard housing for cutaway cables not in risers. I don't know when they started doing that, but it wasn't that long ago. Make sure that's too much Velcro. What else? I'll try to think of some other things. So you want to make sure you have an RSL. Make sure it's free fly friendly. AD pocket. Some other rigs may not have them. Just put that there. Hard housing for cutaway channel in risers. Again, and that's because if you have a line twist, you might have a problem there. If you buy a rig and it doesn't have the hard housing for the risers, then you can just buy another set of risers. I would recommend that. At least, it's up to you. I don't know if I would say it's a required safety feature. But if you're willing to risk it, if you're just doing normal belly jumps, it may not be an issue, or it's not as likely to be an issue. But if you are a wingsuiter, I would say this is absolutely a requirement, because the chances of having line twists in a wingsuit are pretty high, much higher than normal skydiving. Not that you can't have line twists in a normal skydive, because I've certainly had them. But that's the hard housing, because if you have the line twist and they go all the way up to your risers or all the way down to your risers, and then they twist into your cutaway cable, then your cutaway cables are pinched to each other and you can't pull it out, and that's going to be a really bad time. Let's see what else. Safety features. I don't think there's many. Yeah, there's not that many required stuff. I mean, you're like maybe 40 years ago, I would be like, make sure you have the 3-ring system for cutting away versus the old cape wells. You're not gonna find a container that's like that. I mean, I saw one guy trying to sell a couple of years ago. I saw one guy trying to sell a 5-cell reserve, and he wanted $800 for it, and that guy was high. I don't know what he was thinking, but that's a 5-cell reserve. They don't make 5-cell reserves. They haven't made 5-cell reserves in a long, long time. All right, so those are the required safety features. Let's talk about some optional ones. So optional safety features. Number one there, I'd put up MARD, main assisted reserve deployment. In addition to performing as an RSL, because it has to do the RSL part first. As an RSL, the MARD is connected to the reserve bridle and pulls the free bag out when departing. So that's there's a bunch of MARDs on the market. Maybe I'll just do MARD. The Skyhook from UPT and licensed to Aerodyne and Sunpath was the first commercially available one. Now, most other manufacturers have a MARD. Now, older rigs may not. So, for example, the Mojo from Rigging Innovations was only available the past 2 or 3 years, I think. There's a MARD for Firebird that was just released. I think they just started shipping that as of 2025. I don't think it's been out even a year. I could be wrong, though. The Skyhook's been around for like 20 years. I don't know when it was first introduced. When was the Skyhook MARD made available? That's a Wikipedia article. Yeah, all the manufacturers except Jump Shack, they have a MARD. And Jump Shack doesn't believe in RSLs. They are of the opinion that RSLs are not for up jumpers. Or up jumper is it's a term used for more experienced skydivers. And we don't really use that term anymore. When did it come out? I want to say 20 years ago, like early 2000. A lot of research doing this. Yeah, UPT. Can't find a date. I can't find a date. Older reserves may not be compatible. So usually the MARD requires sometimes when a manufacturer creates a MARD, they can retrofit older canopies or older containers rather with the MARD. Sometimes they can't. Like the Curve, the Mojo for rigging innovations, I think, and I'm not positive here, I think it could be retrofitted to any of the Curves, but not anything earlier than that. Sunpath, you could put in a MARD, you could put in the Skyhook on a Sunpath. You could do that, but it had to be made in 2005 or 2007. Because I had a 2005 model when my first rig, I bought it in 2013. It was a 2005 model, and I think 2007 was the cutoff. Anything earlier? No, it was 99. Yeah, retrofit, Javelin, Skyhook. Yeah, 2007. Yeah, because they had to change the way that they did, because they have a Collins lanyard, which is a aspect of the MARD. So auto rigs may not be compatible. So if you have a rig from a manufacturer that offers a MARD, your rig may be too old to have that MARD retrofitted, but it might not be. It depends on the MARD. Some of the designs are different. Optional safety feature. What else? I'm gonna cheat. Actually, look at one of the order forms, because that's what's gonna happen. Is they're gonna go to a order form. So let's go to Sunpath. The rig manufacturers are pretty cagey on how many units they sell per year. I don't know if this is quite accurate. At one point, I think it was UPT was number 1, Sunpath was number 2, Aerodyne was number 3, Velocity was number 4. I don't think Aerodyne is number 3 anymore. I think they've gone down a couple just because they've had trouble delivering stuff. So I think Velocity is number 3 now. Actually, UPT might not be number 1 anymore because they have such a high lead time. It's like a year to get a UPT rig. So I don't know what it is, but I'll say the top 3 probably in terms of sales volume is going to be UPT, Sunpath, and Velocity. I don't really, there's not really any industry there's not really industry analysts that are tracking this kind of thing. You could find someone who bought a rig and then find someone who bought a rig about a year later and then just compare serial numbers. That might work. All right, let's go to design your rig. Some of the container manufacturers have these design your rig things. So let's go ahead and get started here. Symmetrical design container, split design container. Oh, that's just aesthetics. Harness articulation. Oh yeah, rings. So we can do chest rings. We can do hip rings, or we can do hip and chest rings. I am of the opinion that hip rings are great. Chest rings are not that important. And if I just had to choose between one of the two, I would just get hip rings. I would almost always get hip rings when I was buying a container. So I would recommend hip rings. Chest rings, I really haven't found them to be that useful. I have them in both of my main rigs. I have 4 rigs. One's a water rig, one's an old rig, and then I have 2 that I jump regularly. They both have chest articulation, but I don't think it's that important. UPT doesn't even offer chest articulation. So, yeah, I don't think that's a big deal there. Then leg pads. It's if you have a one-piece leg pad, it's tough to replace the leg pad in case you have a problem. If you have these, I think these are easier to replace. Yeah, because you can get them off. They're not part of the. Yeah, I think they're easy to replace. Could be wrong there. Because sometimes if you slide in a lot, then you start to wear that fabric, and that's okay. But the actual leg strap itself, if you wear that, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be an airworthiness issue. So I might go for the spin ones. And those, yeah, back pads. That's not a safety feature. Neither are the leg pads, really. Container colors, we don't care about that. Reserve pin cover, no stripe. That's aesthetics. Embroidery, those are aesthetics. Options. Cutaway angle. Oh yeah, we got to choose between cutaway handle. Pillow or D-ring. And then for the reserve handle, no, so that's a cutaway. It's the reserve handle. And then the cutaway handle. Loop. So when you cut away, you almost all the cutaway handles are going to be pillows. There may be some people that may have some dexterity issues with their hands. Maybe they've got arthritis or something like that, and it's better for them to have a loop so they can just put their thumb into it and pull it. So I'm going to mention that as an optional safety feature. In some cases, it may be beneficial to have a loop for the cutaway handle. I'm going to put that in there. Oh yeah, there's also the pull out versus throw out. Put this in here. Most containers are throw out. You reach back, grab, throw the pilot chute. Some containers are pull out. You reach back, pull, handle, which pulls, pin, then let go. This is what you probably learned on. So like if this was I was buying a rig and I was going through, that's what I would do. So we want to throw out. The throw out handle type. And there's the free fly PUD. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to go through here. So do we want a free fly PUD with tuck tab? Do we want a hacky? Or do we want a hacky with a tuck tab? And we'll talk about, all of mine are hackies with tuck tabs. And that's the one I like. because I like the Hacky because it's a ball. It conforms to your hand shape the best, in my opinion. It's easier to grab and throw. But it's also what you're used to. If you're used to the Pud, which is usually just it's a little tab you can grab. You have to grab it a little bit differently. I think it's harder to grab. But free flyers like it because it's tighter into the BOC, so it's less likely to come out during a free fly. Because if you sit fly, that deployment handle right here is getting that relative wind at 150 plus miles an hour. So if it's loose a little bit, it can come out. And if you have a deployment at 150 miles an hour, that's going to be a bad day. Main deployment bag. Oh, yeah, we're going to do that. That's another option. Do we want a standard D-bag? Or do we want a semi-stolus D-bag? So there's some discussions there. Chest strap size, type 8 or type 17. 17 is the 1-inch chest strap size. I hate those. I prefer the 2-inch size, but it's just mental. I think it's type 17. Yeah. Extended chest strap. I'm going to say, yeah, you want it. Because it just means how much slack is in the chest strap. If you have the rig for a while and you're starting to gain some weight, then you're going to need a little bit more room on your chest strap. It's mostly for what swoopers use, or if you want to do high performance landings, you can loosen your chest strap, not undo it, but loosen it. And that's going to allow, if you have extensions in the chest strap slack, it's going to allow the parachute to open up more and fly a little bit better. So cut-in laterals. Dynamic corners. Yeah, we'll do cut-in laterals. Just put a section there. Dynamic corners. Yeah, I generally don't recommend those. So I think I put dynamic corners in here. Useful for wingsuiting. Makes makes packing a little more difficult. A number of people have said that if I hate my dynamic corners, or more than one. Riser types, dive loop. Oh yeah, the riser sizes. Riser length. Riser width. Dive loops. No profile risers. If you're watching this video to pick your first container, you do not need low profile risers. They're just for like reducing drag, so you can swoop as far as you can. Belly band, leg pack covers, spare parts kit, container sizing. We talked about this. Contact info, details. Yeah. All right. So yeah, I filled out a whole bunch of stuff in here. So I've got 30 slides. This is going to be, so I typically say 2 minutes per slide, 2 to 5 minutes per slide, but these are going to be, this is going to be a long video. So this will probably be one of my 45-minute videos, maybe even an hour. When I make this presentation, but I got a lot done. I think I'm going to call it a night. I've been at this for an hour, almost 2 hours now. So I think I'm going to call this a night. And so yeah, that's what I do. That's my process. So if you're watching this and you stuck through it and Just kind of wanted to know what it's like when I make content. So I half made 30, I half made 20 slides, and I fully made some more. I get the bones of the presentation done. So just fill in some details. All right. If you're still here, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.